This is the PDE, one-dimensional partial differential equation, or basically one-dimensional in time and to second order in your spatial coordinate. So this is a one-dimensional heat equation. It is also called as diffusion equation. And what we are basically doing is we are solving this equation numerically. So numerically basically means that we are approximating this time derivative and this partial derivative using some numerical methods or finite difference method. So at this point, we are not interested to know how we actually get or approximate this. We will actually learn those concepts when we actually learn the numerical differentiation and integration. But at this point, you are given that formula that how you can approximate these partial derivatives using finite difference formula. And what your formula that basically tells you is given as u j k plus 1 minus u of j at time derivative k divided by delta t, where this j and k, let me actually explain. These j and k are basically are the coordinates from the grid point. So if I have a grid of points where this is my time coordinate and this is my spatial coordinate, it starts at 0. So time t0, t1, and so on till tm. And similarly, you have x0, x1 till xn plus 1. So you are basically defining a grid of region and you are discretizing the grid into many points. And what each points basically resemble is that at time t is equals to 0, just give me a second if I have another pen. Yeah. So at time t is equals to 0, all the points on this grid defines the temperature distribution or the variable distribution for that physical domain. The physical domain is a long strip of metallic rod, which has got a hot surface and a cold surface, and it is insulated. So you are not worrying about the heat loss happening from to the surroundings, but the heat flow is happening in only one directional. So that is why it is called one-dimensional heat equation. You have certain temperature at this end and certain temperature at this end. These are the boundary conditions. So this is your boundary condition, and this is also your boundary condition. And what you are interested to know is how the temperature, which is given by variable u that defines your temperature, how this temperature varies as a function of time. So that is basically what this differential equation tells you. So how this variable varies with time, with respect to time. The temperature distribution happens in this rod. And this rod is basically divided into grid points where this is your x0, x1, x2, and so on and so forth till xn plus 1. Is that clear to everybody so far?
Yes, Professor.
Yeah. So if this is a length L, then I can discretize this length L into number of grid points, and that is what basically it represents. X0, x1, x2 represents the grid points. And corresponding to each specific point, the temperature at x0 is basically called as U. So each of this is defined by J. So J goes from 0 to n plus 1. And this is at time t0, which is your initial condition. Then at time t is equals to t1, time t is equals to t2, and so on till time t is equals to tm, which tm is basically the time at the final time, which is basically given to as how much seconds, I forgot what is that seconds, whatever the number of seconds is given. So what you are basically interested to know is that at every time step, at time t is equals to 0, t1 is basically t naught plus delta t, t2 is t0 plus 2 times delta t, and so on. And t is basically t0 plus m delta t. That's how your times are defined. Does that make sense? Yeah.
So far, yeah.
If t0 is basically 0 seconds, then basically t is equals to capital T sine delta t. So what you are basically interested in is that you subscript J represent the temperature at this grid point. So if J is 0, then this represents the temperature at this point. If J equals 1, then it represents temperature at this x1. If J equals 2, then it represents temperature at x2. If J equals n plus 1, where n plus 1 is basically 202, so it basically goes from 0 to 201 points. So J goes from 0 to 201 basically. That was given to you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So now if I mean, this much explains the part of the problem that we need to solve. So what we need to solve is temperature distribution for time t is equals to t1, because at time t is equals to 0, the initial conditions are already given to you, which is basically the distribution that was provided. It is 70 plus, so u of j at time 0 is given as 70 plus sine 2 pi x of j degree centigrade. Yeah. Farhan says no. What is basically you are not getting, Farhan? So is it making sense, guys, so far?
Yeah.
So any questions so far, guys?
So that's for U temperature, Professor. So we just substitute, I guess, like one, like on that 2 pi, the x like times 1, 70 plus 2 pi, and then x equals to 1. Then
Yeah, xj would be basically x0, x1 would be x0 plus this delta x. So xj would be just like t of subscript k, x0 would be x0 plus delta x times whatever m coordinate is, or whatever jth coordinate is. So if it's j, then it is basically times j. So if you want x1, then x naught plus delta x times 1. If it is x2, it is x naught plus delta x times 2. This is 1. This distance is all delta x in this spacing. All spacing is delta x. And similarly in time spacings, it is delta t. So this all spacings are delta t. So this spacing is delta t, and this spacing is delta x. Is that clear to everybody so far?
Yes.
Yes, great. So this time derivative is approximated by this specific variables. The variables are u subscript j. J represents the spatial domain in this direction, and k represents a time domain in this direction. So u subscript j superscript k plus 1. So value of this temperature at individual grid points at k plus 1 minus temperature distribution at the grid points at value k divided by delta t, which is delta t is the spacing distance. That is how the first partial derivative is approximated. And the second partial derivative is approximated by another formula, which was given to you as beta del 2u over del x square is given as beta u of j plus 1, k plus 1 minus 2uj k.
Tinext ko na. Hindi. Katatext ko lang.
Sorry?
Sabi ko, hindi ka makaka-ano.
Sorry?
Umalis ka na.
So your mic is not muted. Please. Okay, so that is what you will approximate the first partial derivative, and this is how you will approximate second partial derivative. So if you equate this, you will basically end up with the equation that was basically given to you as minus gamma u j minus 1 k plus 1 plus 1 plus 2 gamma u of j k plus 1 minus gamma u of j plus 1 k plus 1 equals u of j k. where gamma is beta times delta t divided by delta x square. Okay, so is everybody with me so far? This is the final equation you have to deal with in this homework problem. So if you do not understand all the other things that we have just discussed, all the text that was basically mentioned is just to make sure that you understand the description. So this is what we actually I actually discussed described in the problem to make you understand understand what we are doing. But if you are not concerned about any of this, then this is the equation you have to basically deal with in this homework problem. And in this homework or in this specific equation, if I ask you what are the unknowns, can somebody tell me what will be the unknowns?
It's U11 to U.
Okay, so for all the unknown variables are here all the temperature distribution from U1, U2 up to U200. This is a part of boundary condition and this is a part of boundary condition. Is that making sense, guys?
Yes.
At t is equals to t naught is equals to 0 second. So basically this is for k equals at let me say t is equals to t1 or k equals 1. So we start with k equals 1 because for k equals 0 corresponds to your initial conditions that are already given to you. So if I have to see in this equation, what are my unknowns? Unknowns are all the temperatures distributions, but at a specific time instant. So this is the temperature distribution at j minus 1 point at j plus 1. So j starts from, our j will start from 1 because this is your unknown. U2 is unknown. This is your unknowns, U1, U2, U3. At the very start and at the very end. This is a part of your boundary condition. Are you guys getting this much?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is U0, this is J0, this is at J equals 0, and this is J equals n plus 1. This is a part of your boundary condition. So these are not required to be determined. These are basically given to you. This is basically a temperature at this end is given to you. Temperature at this end is given to you. So the unknowns are all the interior points, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, up to 200. So it will go up to 200. These are the temperature at these individual grid points at time t equals 1. So at time t equals 1 means when k is basically, k is equals to, we'll start with k is equals to, actually, let's start with k equals 0. The reason I will actually come to this part why I changed to k equals 0. If I substitute k equals 0 in this equation, what can you write this equation? Or if I actually write this equation, you will actually get this thing. Let me write it for you. Minus gamma u, j is starting from 1. So u0, 1, k is 0 at this point of time. 1 plus 2 gamma u of 1 at 1 minus gamma u of 2 at 1 is equals to u of 1 of 0. Right here, I actually started with j equals 1 and k equals 0. So I started with j equals 1 and k equals 0. Right? Is everybody with me so far?
Yes.
Yes.
Everybody is following it so far? Yeah?
Yeah.
So keeping k is equals to 0, k equals 0 basically means we are basically at the, starting with k equals 0, we have to march in time forward. So keeping k is equals to 0, if I now go from j equals 2 and k equals 0, what do I get? I will get minus gamma u1 1 plus 1 plus 2 gamma u21 minus gamma u31 is equals to u20. Yeah. Is everybody with me?
Yes.
Yes, Professor.
Yeah. And if I keep on doing that and say j equals now 200 and k equals 0 minus gamma u 199 1 plus 1 plus 2 gamma u 201 minus gamma u 201 1 is equals to u 200 0. Make sense, guys?
Yes.
Professor,
Yes.
I think JE 202 not 200 because we have to neglect the first boundary condition and last boundary condition.
Come again.
I think J equals 202 not 200 because the when create a matrix we have to neglect the first boundary condition and last boundary condition.
Yeah, so I will come to that actually, why I'm not using that. So our values are stopping at 201, right? I mean, this is your starts from 0 and it goes up to 201. So J actually goes maximum to 201, right?
Yes.
Right, it makes sense.
Is it because of the n+1 rule that we established earlier? That's why you can only go up to 200.
Sorry, come again.
Is it because of the n+1 that we can only go up for k equals 200, or something else?
I'm not getting what you're saying. Can you please speak a bit louder?
Oh, because you said like the boundary, I mean the values for j is between 0 to n+1, so that's why we can only go up to 200 because it's an n+1.
The reason I'm not going up to 201 because these are already known to me. This is a part of the boundary condition. I don't need to solve for that. I mean, okay, so let me actually write it down for you. So if j equals 201 and k equals 0, what you will get? Minus gamma u 201 plus 1 plus 2 gamma u 201 1 minus gamma u 202 1, which is basically not existing, right? Right. For this specific part, I don't have this term because I'm exceeding my boundary. My boundary stops at 201. So I cannot go for what is this 202. I don't need to go to this 202. This is already known to me. So I don't need to consider that. Even if I consider this, I will end up with this equation where this temperature at 202 is basically undefined because there is no 202 terms here. It's only it's go from 0, 1 to up to 201. Are you getting what I'm saying?
Okay, I get it.
Total number of points are 202, but you have unknowns it starts from 1 and it ends up to 200. These are the unknowns. This is a boundary condition known to you 30 degrees C. This is a boundary condition known to you 200 degrees C. It's known to you. Yeah. Are you getting, guys?
Yes,
Yeah.
Professor.
So this is not required. So we start with this and we end up with this. Now, if you look at these equations, can you write in matrix form and tell me what the form will look like? Can somebody write it in matrix form and let me know what it will look like? Remember that all the right-hand side, these are already known to you, isn't it? These are all known values. Why it is known? Because this is happening at time t is equals to 0, initial conditions. Right? That is what is given to you, j of 0. At any grid point at time t0, this is your initial condition. The distribution of temperature is given by this function. So you already know the value of u of 10. U of 10 would be 70 plus sine 2 pi x1. X1 would be x0 plus delta x. So x0 is basically starting from 0. So 0 plus delta x. Then x2 will be 2 delta x. x3 will be 3 delta x, and so on and so forth.
Professor, so the subscript of U1, that represents the location, and then
Yes. Superscript represents a time.
Got it. All right.
So superscript represents a time, and subscript represents the spatial coordinate.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Let me know if you guys understand it so far, and if you guys have any questions.
So if we create a matrix, it's going to be like about 200 by 200 because it's going to like, we have.
Yeah, so basically, if you have seen that, then you will basically end up with this matrix equation. And what this matrix equation will be, it will have unknowns as u1 of 1, u2 at 1, u3 at 1 till u200 at 1. These are your unknowns. And your matrix equation would be, I mean, this, since u0 is already known to you, so it will end up in the right hand side. It will go, and what you actually get up is 1 plus 2 gamma, negative gamma, all zeros. Then you have negative gamma, 1 plus 2 gamma, negative gamma, all zeros. Then 0, negative gamma, 1 plus 2 gamma, negative gamma, all zeros. And it will keep on going like that. And it will end up with a tridiagonal system.
So does that mean we have to input a 200 by 200 matrix in MATLAB?
Well, you don't have to enter. You will see that the structure is remaining the same. The first the diagonal elements will be all 1 plus 2 gamma. The upper diagonal will be all negative gamma. The lower diagonal will be all negative gamma. So you can easily write a for loop to initialize this matrix. You don't have to go one by one. You just have to don't say A11 will be this, A12 will be this. No, there is I mean, that is what your programming skill would be, that how can you write a 3-line code to make this matrix. You can create in a 3-line basically code. Now that I'm not going to tell you how, you basically can learn it by yourself, or you can, that's what you need to learn. I'm not going to tell you. But what you will end up with is this matrix system, which will be your A matrix, unknowns, and will be a known vector. Known vector would be, now this minus negative gamma will go here, and this negative gamma 201 will end up here in the right hand side. So only this term and this term will go to the right hand side. Everything will remain in the left hand side, because u0, this is a part of the boundary condition, and u201 is a part of the boundary condition. 201 is a boundary condition, 0 is a boundary condition. At every time that will remain same. So this term will go. So A term, and this is B vector, which are all known vectors. And this is now just a matrix form, and you know how to deal with matrices. We have been learning from the last 1 month how to deal with matrices. So this is a lower triangular system. I mean, this is a tridiagonal system. You can solve it using LU decomposition. You can solve it using Thomas method. After you solve it, what you will get is all the values at time t1. Now, then what you have to do is you have to repeat this for k equals 1. Then what you will get, you will solve it for time t2. Then you have to solve for time t3. Then you have to solve for time t4. And you have to keep on doing that till you reach this specific capital time. So for every time instant, you are solving this matrix equation. Does it make sense?
So we're going to be doing 2,000 time steps?
Yes. I mean, you are not doing it by hand. You are basically asking MATLAB or any other language code to do it for you. Okay. Any questions, guys, so far?
But if we do a different k, will that change the vector, the non-vector b?
I'm sorry.
Go to the next step, like after the time, if we go the next step, like will it change the vector b?
So the only thing that will change is vector B. Vector A will remain same for, or matrix A will remain same for every time step. This is solving for, and solve this system of equation for uj at time step 1. Then you have to similarly solve for uj at time step 2. And then you have to keep on doing that till you actually reach capital T. So that is basically all the hint I could have provided to you. Beyond this, it's basically means, again, giving you all, I mean, not letting you to think about the problem. So you just think, and basically you will get to know how to code it, how to basically put in the MATLAB context and make it automated. So what I'm interested in after you actually get is basically temperature distribution. So what you are basically doing is every time step, you are basically finding our temperature value. So if this is my grid, this is T0 and this is X0, X1, X2 till X201. So you are basically already given the initial conditions, but what you are solving is for all the values in the interior of it. So at time T1, you are solving for these temperature distribution. At time T2, you are solving for temperature distribution at all the grid points. So imagine this is a thin strip of metal, and at every time step, the temperature distribution will keep on changing. This is the temperature distribution at time T3. And you have to basically solve this system of equation to get the temperature distribution at every time step till you actually reach the final stage, which is the temperature distribution at time T is equals to capital T. That is what we actually need to determine. And what you need to do a plot is a 3-dimensional plot where your x-axis will be your time. So it goes from T0, T1 up to T of capital T. And your y value is basically has the spatial coordinates. So it starts from x0, x1, x2 up to x201. And this is your temperature distribution. So how the temperature distribution will be represented in a 3-dimensional plot, that's what you basically have to do. So you can use surface plot or some other type of plots in MATLAB to represent the temperature distribution in this one axis, in this one figure. So I want to plot these results in one figure. So let me actually tell you, it basically will be some sort of figure, some sort of surface like this. So this is not the actual figure you will get. I'm just showing you what you will get. So you basically will be getting a bunch of data points. So at time T for corresponding to X0, you will get a temperature point. And basically, if you see, you will actually get a grid of points. And that grid of points will represent the temperature distribution from initial time to final time for the entire length. So that's what you have to plot in your homework. Let me know if it is making sense or if it is not. If it is not, please, I will ask you guys to think again more about the problem, read it, and hopefully it will make sense. And eventually, you basically have to solve this matrix equation. Now, instead of just asking you, okay, giving you this matrix, okay, this is a tridiagonal system, solve for unknown X using Thomas diagonal method, I give you the context behind this specific problem. So that is what this homework problem is all about.
Professor, for time interval k, I think where I solve for k has to go from like 0 to 40,000 something.
Yeah. I mean, whatever it is, I don't know what exactly that delta t is. You can find what delta t would be. So
yeah, so I solve for delta t and then solve for k. So I got k go up to like 40,000, like okay. 40,000 iteration.
Okay, fine. That's okay. So you are basically getting scared of 40,000 number or what?
I'm just concerned about like the time it takes to like finish the calculation. I don't know how long, but
Yeah, I mean, you can try and see what it takes. Okay, so that is number one. Any other questions on number one, guys? Okay, number one is done. Number two. So what is number two? Number two is very straightforward. It is the nonlinear system of equation using Newton's method. That's what we were discussing in the last lecture uh, about using nonlinear system of equations. We have two nonlinear system of equations here, and for steady state, dx1 over dt will be 0 and dx2 will be over dt will be 0. I mean, time derivative of x1 and x2 will be 0. So you basically end up with two equations, but they are non-linear and they have to solve simultaneously. So they are not to be solved independently. So what you are basically will end up with is that you have to use Newton's technique, which is using Jacobian matrix, and you can easily solve that. The only challenging part or concerning part would be the result will depend on the starting guess of the initial condition. So that will, you guys will basically need to will basically learn that how the initial conditions, different initial conditions will give you different solutions. So that will basically, you will basically get to know or get the feel of how the Newton's technique for nonlinear system will work, and what are the constraints, what are the shortcomings, or what are basically the pros and cons of using that. So that is what you will learn in the second problem. And number third is basically the same problem we have been doing. Well, it is not exactly the same, but we are basically showing you the use of least squares technique. So you are going to use least squares technique for fitting the straight line, quadratic polynomial, or cubic polynomial, or trigonometric function on the data points which are given by the function f of x. So let me actually write that function for you here. So f of x is given as x cubed minus 4x plus 3 plus nu, where nu is a random noise. Given by uniform distribution within this interval. And x is again a uniformly distributed number over the interval.
Professor, can you move the paper a little bit down?
Yes, I was just noting from the Beachboard, so just let me finish and then I will come to the documentation. Just give me a second. Okay, so let's go to the paper. Okay, so that was basically the function which will generate the data point. So the data points will be generated using this function where this nu is a random noise. So if you see a plot of x and f of x is basically your y as well. So it goes from 0 to 5, and you can basically use MATLAB command uniform random, this specific command in MATLAB, where A is your lower limit, B is your upper limit. If you use this specific command or specific function in MATLAB, your MATLAB will basically give you a number which lies within 0 and 5, which is coming from the uniform distribution. So you can generate a number between 0 and 5 using this command. And for that specific number, you can plug it in this and you will get a function f of x. Now, if you do not consider this random noise, then f of x will be just x cubed minus 4x plus 3, right? If I give you any number between 0 and 5, then you can plug that number in here and you can find the f of x, right? Is it making sense, guys?
Yeah.
So let's say that function, I am not actually showing the actual function, but let's say that function between 0 and 5 looks like this. This is what your function f of x without the noise looks like. So g of x, which is x cubed minus 4x plus 3. This is a function which looks like. Now, if I add the noise, then what happens? Then f of x will not lie on this. It will basically lie like this. The points will be follow the trend, but it will basically go like this. The data points that will come with noise term will be basically lying on this part. So what you are basically trying to do is you are given two, you are basically given two functions. Between 0 and 5, between 0 and 5, you have to select how many points. I said 200, I believe. Let me confirm.
It was 100 samples of X.
100 samples, okay. So you have to generate 100 such numbers. You have to run this function 100 times in a for loop, and you will get 100 numbers between 0 and 5 for each number. You will, if you are using without noise, you will basically get the data points like this. When there is no noise, all the data points will be lying within this curve because there is no noise in it. And what you have to do is you have to fit a straight line, given by y is equals to a naught plus a1x, or quadratic polynomial and a sinusoidal function using least square method, the one that we actually see in the class.
So does that mean like for we have g of x has one set of A matrix and then f of x and another set of A matrix, and then we solve?
Yes, exactly, yeah. So basically you have to fit a straight line using these data points. And in this, if there is no noise, and here for the same number, you will get if the curve looks like this, the data points will not be on the curve, but it will be like this because there is a random noise. And this number is generated again like this function, but within the interval minus 0.5 and 0.5. So the data points will be scattered, will not be just like lying on smoothly on this function, but it will basically follow the trend, but it will be not lying on this because there is a noise associated with it. So the data points will be all scattered from the actual function, the trend line. The trend is, the mean line is given by this function, and then with the noise, the data points will be here. Now with these data points, if you fit a straight line, quadratic polynomial, cubic polynomial using least squares technique, so how you are going to do that. So that is what number 3 is. Let me know if it makes sense or if you have any questions.
What we do is like using that MATLAB random number generator from intervals, we just plug it into the function and then.
Yes, so this is without noise. So here mu is 0, and this is with noise, where mu is given by uniform random function between minus 0.5 and 0.5. So for every x you are generating between 0 and 5, you are also generating the noise between minus 0.5 and 0.5. Plug all the numbers in here and you will get a fx value. Okay. Any questions, guys? If not, then I will ask you guys to continue working on your homework problem, but it is not something which you can start before 2 days of your submission or before 3 days of your submission and you can finish it. That will not be possible. At least that's what I think. I mean, I may be wrong, but that's what I think. You have to really think, or you have to really search, and you have to look at different references, how to code a specific matrices, how to combine the matrices in a useful form, how to store the value. There are many issues that you will deal with when you are doing the coding. So this homework problem will help you to learn those coding exercises or coding problems. So you are allowed to look at the references from the internet. So if you want to see how the uniform random numbers are being generated, what is the easiest code, you can easily look at in Google and get those short snippets that you require. But you still need to provide a lot of thinking about the problem, the structure, and what you need to do. So that you cannot do it in simply 2 days for sure. At least I cannot do it in 2 days. Any questions, guys?
Mister, if we do that, if we fit like a function like a straight line and a quadratic equation on the data out of the 100 that we get, I mean, we don't have to use 100, right? Because we're strictly dictated by which polynomial we're using. That like
you have to use, you are basically given 100 data points. It is not that you are given only 3 data points. You are given 100 data points. You are given 100 data points. And within these data points, if you have to fit a straight line through that data points, how are you going to fit that? Or within that data points, if you have to fit a quadratic polynomial, how are you going to fit it? So you have basically 100 equations, but if you're using straight line, there are only 2 unknowns. If you're using quadratic polynomial, it is basically 3 unknowns. A1x plus A2x squared. There are 3 unknowns, but you will get 100 equations to solve for. So it is just using that least squares technique that you are going to obtain the coefficients. Are you getting what I'm saying?
Yes, Professor.
Also, there also be 100 by something, depends on the function we're using.
Come again?
So if we make an A matrix, it's going to be 100 by some by the degree of the polynomial we're using, pretty much.
Yes, the 100 by the number of unknowns. So for this A matrix would be 100 by 2. For this, the A matrix would be 100 by 3 because you have 3 unknowns. For this, the A matrix would be 100 by 4, depending on the number of unknowns. So that's how your A matrix will be constructed about. Size of A matrix, size of A matrix. Okay. Any questions, guys? Other questions? So we have not started our today's lecture yet, but that's okay. I mean, this homework problems is just like it's another lecture. So it was basically taking some time for me to make these problems, but then I think it should give you good practice in what you have learned so far or implementing what you have learned so far. Any questions, guys? Everybody is good so far?
Yes, Professor, so far.
Great. So let's actually start today. So today we are basically starting, or we are going to start the concept of eigenvalues. So what are eigenvalues, and basically this is chapter number, I believe, number 9, matrix eigenvalue problems. So we are interested in dealing with finding eigenvalues of a matrix. So what are eigenvalues? So eigenvalues basically are for every n by n matrix, there are a set of scalars which may be complex or real. Such that it satisfies this system of equation, where this is basically called as a characteristic equation, or basically tells you that for every such scalar, there exists a vector which, when operated by matrix A, remains the same. It does not change its direction. So what it happens, so if you see, this is a vector. This is an eigenvector corresponding to lambda I. So for every n by n square matrix A, you have this set of scalars. These scalars are called as eigenvalues if they satisfy this equation. But equation it says that if you multiply that matrix A with a vector, and that basically will remain the same as the vector itself multiplied by the scalar. So this is called as eigenvector and this is called as eigenvalue. So what it says that if you multiply a matrix A with an eigenvector, the eigenvector remains the same. It does not change its direction. It does not gets transformed, but it only gets multiplied with a scalar number. That means it only gets a change in its length. It has either gets increased or decreased. So its direction does not change. If you think the vector is one direction, for example, if I say 2i plus 3j, it is just vector which is basically given by this representation where I and j are the unit vectors. I is the x in the x direction or the horizontal direction, unit vector in the horizontal direction, and unit vector in the vertical direction. If I say 2i plus 3j, it basically means 2, 1, 2, 3. It basically means a vector OA which points from origin to this coordinate which is given by 2i plus 3j. So this is a vector which basically has got a direction and a length. That's what a vector is. Vector basically means it has got a magnitude, it is the length of it, and it has got a direction. This is a direction it is pointing to. So if you multiply this vector by a matrix A, the vector does not change its direction. It will either increase or it will decrease in its length. So that basically we call as an eigenvalue problem, where this is your eigenvalue and this is your eigenvector. Does it make sense, guys?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, and basically this is to solve for this, the vectors are basically non-zero vectors. So to solve this equation, you have to use this determinant of this matrix to be 0, which will lead to a characteristic equation, a polynomial equation, lambda n plus some number lambda n minus 1 plus some number lambda n minus 2 plus some number up till lambda 1. So that if you basically set the determinant of this matrix equals 0, because this vector is not 0, because that is not what an eigenvector is. Eigenvector is a non-zero vector which satisfies this equation. So if this vector is non-zero, then this matrix has to have a determinant equals to 0. That means it has to be a singular matrix. So I mean, like, you cannot just say that matrix equals 0. This is not just one number. This is a matrix. I cannot just say matrix equals 0. So what you have to do is when matrix is basically set as 0, basically we are saying the determinant of this matrix has to be 0, or it has to be a singular matrix. And you end up with a characteristic equation which we call as, and which we can solve for lambda. So this is a polynomial in nth degree polynomial, and the roots of this will give you the eigenvalues. So roots of this characteristic polynomial of this characteristic polynomial, nth degree polynomial, will be your eigenvalues. So let's take just one specific example from the textbook. I am basically looking at the example 9 point, actually we'll start with 9.1 actually. So I'm just taking the textbook examples, example 9.1. And it says that if your A matrix is given as -1, -3, 0, and 2. If I have to find the eigenvalues for this matrix. So what I will do, if I have to find the eigenvalues for this, I will write this in this equation form where my eigenvalues will be A minus lambda times I, and determinant of that equals 0. So A is -1, -3, 0, 2, minus lambda. I is an identity matrix of the same order as your size of the A is. And you are basically making the determinant of that equals 0. So it will be -1 minus lambda, -3, 0, 2 minus lambda. And if you take the determinant of that, you will basically come up, you will basically see it will be -1 minus lambda and 2 minus lambda equals 0. Yeah. Are you guys with me so far?
Yes, Professor.
Yeah. And if you solve for this, you will basically get lambda is -1 and lambda equals 2. So basically this is a quadratic equation, but since it is already in the parenthesis form, or basically the factors, it has been already factored out. So you can easily calculate the lambda as -1 and lambda is equals to 2. Yeah. Are you guys with me so far?
Yes.
Yeah. So these are your eigenvalues, and corresponding to these eigenvalues, you have eigenvectors. So how to get eigenvectors? So you basically go back to this equation, A minus lambda I times lambda 1 times I gives you V1. So what you have to do is to solve for eigenvectors. What I have to do is I have to first select each individual eigenvalue. So if my eigenvalue is -1, so corresponding to -1, what I will do is I will solve this equation again. And this is my corresponding to lambda 1, I have V1, and that has to solve this equation, system of equation. Now I have -1, -3, 0, 2, minus lambda 1I will be -1, 0, 0, -1. V equals 0. And if you basically see, it will basically comes out to be 0, -3, and 0, 3 times V equals 0. Are you guys with me so far?
Yeah.
Yeah. And can you solve for the vector V here? To solve for this vector V, what we have to do, we have to use this vector V is again, it is a 2-dimensional vector. So you have one component and second component. So let's say I call that as V1. Let's say I represent that as 0, 0, -3, 3. I'm making the augmented matrix, and that will be solving this will basically give me V1 vector, which has got the first component and it has got the second component. So there are two unknowns for this vector because it is a 2-dimensional vector. So if I have to solve this, you can easily see that if I just add these two rows, what I will get is 0, 3, 0, 0, 0, 0. Just performing an elementary row operation, and you will see that this has got one independent variable. It has got one variable which is free. So one of them basically can be any number. So generally, you will basically pick. So for the bottom one, there are two components. One component, which is V1, 2, can be any variable, can be any number. So let's say I take it as say 1, and if I take this as 1, I can solve for V1, 1. Just give me a second. So what if I write this equation back? What will I get? I will get -3 V1, 2 equals 0. So V1, 2 is basically defined, that is 0. So this is This is basically not v1 comma 2 because v1 comma 2 can be obtained from the first equation. The free variable is v1 comma 1, which you basically take as any number, which can be 1, -1 based on your choice. So the eigenvector corresponding to lambda 1, lambda is equal to -1 would be 1 and 0. Make sense? Are you guys with me?
Yes.
Yeah, just written down.
I have a question, Professor.
Yeah, go ahead.
So how did you get V11 equals to 1?
How do I get this?
Yes.
So it need not be 1. It can be 2, 3, -5, -10, 11, 14, 15, any number of your choice.
Oh, I see. Okay.
This is any number of your choice. And as I have mentioned you a while ago that generally speaking, the rule of the thumb is that whenever you have a free variable, you select as 1. That's it. But it need not be 1. It can be any number of your choice. So the eigenvectors are always gives you the direction. You can never be, the eigenvectors will never be like give you the actual magnitude. They're always in relative term. The relative term because one of the variable is free. So this can be any number. It can be 1, 2, 3, 5, -5, -10, whatever that number be, what of your choice. This is a number of your choice. Number of your choice. Now this basically means that any eigenvector has only defined direction, but not magnitude. So any eigenvector, so this is the eigenvector corresponding to lambda is equals to -1. Similarly, you can take lambda equals 2, you rewrite, you resolve this equation and you will get another eigenvector. Again, you will see there will be one free variable and you can select a number of your choice for the other, for that independent variable. But again, you will actually see that one of that number has to be of your choice. Basically is an independent variable. It can be any number. And that defines that the eigenvectors have defined directions. That means this vector has a direction, but I am not sure about the magnitude because if somebody tells me, somebody of you basically say, no, I do not want to take 1, but I'm going to take 10. The magnitude will be different. Somebody says, I will take -5. You are good to take -5. That's fine. But then what it will happen, the magnitude will be undefined in that sense. So I can never say the magnitude of the eigenvector is defined, but the direction is defined. Is that making sense so far?
Yes.
Yeah, guys.
Yes.
So depending on whatever number of eigenvalues you have as many number of eigenvectors. Now, so all of them eigenvectors will be independent or not independent. That's what we will actually see in our discussion in the next lecture. So today I will basically stop at this point of time just to recap what we are trying to deal or we are trying to understand about the eigenvalues. Any matrix A, which is the size of n by n, has got n eigenvalues, and each of these eigenvalues has got an eigenvector, specific vector, which is specific to this specific value, eigenvalue. So every eigenvalue has got its own eigenvector. That's number one. And how to get the eigenvalues? First, you solve this equation where A minus lambda times the identity matrix. You take the determinant, set it equals to 0. You will end up with the nth degree polynomial, and you solve for the roots. By now, you know how to find the roots of a polynomial. You know use numerical methods. There are so many other methods that you have learned so far. You can easily find the roots of a polynomial, and that will give you the eigenvalues. We will also see some other techniques of solving for the eigenvalues in this chapter on this topic when we will be covering these methods. But solving the roots of this equation will basically give you the eigenvalues. And for each of these eigenvalues, you can find its corresponding eigenvector by plugging back the specific value of that specific value you have got. So for this 2 by 2, I am got 2 eigenvalues. And for each of these eigenvalues, I will get one eigenvector, which is given by V1 for lambda 1, and for lambda 2, it will be V2. And when we actually solve for the eigenvector, always there will be a case when at least one of the component will be independent. So that will be based on the choice of any number you can pick based on your choice. And that basically means that eigenvectors will have a defined direction, but not the magnitude. So that is the characteristic of the eigenvectors. So with this description about what we have learned so far, any questions, guys, you may have?